This final video will introduce you to complex and compound complex sentences, our third and fourth sentence types. These final sentence types are important in creating sentence variety and improving coherence or flow between sentences. These are the things that make your writing more understandable, more palatable, and more engaging. Complex sentences combine independent clauses with dependent clauses. Remember that an independent clause can stand on its own and a dependent clause cannot. In a complex sentence, one of the clauses is dependent because it begins with a dependent word. Even though Bob hates Woody Allen films, and one of the two clauses is independent because it has a complete subject-predicate pair. He loves comedies. Notice the comma between the two parts. In some complex sentences, the comma bonds the dependent part of the sentence to the independent part. Remember, a dependent clause begins with a dependent word or subordinating conjunction. Here are some of the more common subordinating conjunctions. You don't have to memorize these, but be aware that when you do see a sentence with one of the words at the beginning, it is a dependent or subordinate clause. Complex sentences should be punctuated in one of two ways. The first pattern pairs an independent clause followed by a dependent clause. I love pizza, unless it has anchovies on it. In this example, notice that there is no comma because the independent clause appears before the dependent clause. The second pattern begins with a dependent clause, and then that's followed by a comma and an independent clause. Unless it has anchovies on it, I love pizza. Notice that in this example, the pattern requires a comma because the dependent part of the sentence comes before the independent part. To remember how independent and dependent clauses interact, think of a parent and child. The parent is independent. He or she does not need the child to meet his or her basic needs. However, a child is dependent on a parent. In order to fulfill his or her basic needs, a child is often reliant on a parent or guardian. To review, when the dependent clause begins a sentence, it is followed by a comma and the independent clause. The comma joins the two clauses together. When the independent clause comes before the dependent, no comma is needed. You might have noticed that both compound and complex sentences allow you to combine thoughts together, using different words that convey different relationships between the ideas. However, compound sentences differ from complex sentences in one important way. In a compound sentence, both clauses have equal importance. Fred was tired, but he finished his homework. In this compound sentence, both clauses are independent. Both can stand on their own. They're equal. However, in a complex sentence, the independent clause is more dominant. Remember that parent analogy? Complex sentences often increase interest, add variety, and improve coherence by creating this dominant and dependent relationship. The final sentence type is a compound complex sentence. A compound complex sentence combines all of the sentence types in one. First, we have our independent clause or simple sentence. Mike stays up all night. If we join a dependent clause to that, although he is tired, our sentence becomes complex. Finally, we end the pattern with a coordinating conjunction. 4, followed by an independent clause. He is a pre-med student, making the sentence compound and therefore the complete sentence compound complex. Mike stays up all night although he is tired, for he is a pre-med student. To review, complex and complex compound sentences combine independent clauses and dependent clauses to form very specific relationships. Complex and compound complex sentences combine the other sentence types, simple, compound, and complex, to help create more variety and improve coherence or flow between ideas.